remember this case like it was yesterday. That stormy night with heavy raindrops thrashing against my window while I was getting ready for the night shift at the Redwater Police Station. I've read many books on skinwalkers, spooky tales told around the campfire. I had thought, never would I have expected to encounter one in my city, especially one that powerful. I had just become detective inspector in the Redwater Police Force, which meant my long black coat and hat, my favorite attire, was what I could wear to work every night. I was also thankful the RPF had a night shift. Wouldn't make sense for a vampire to be around the day shift. Though working in the night never stopped the side eyes or the questions regarding my appearance. Why was I so pale? Why did my ears look pointy like an elf? Why did I feel so cold to the touch? Why at times did folks see my eyes glowing in the night? Questions that I answered with excuses. I hate lying, though for the safety of others I had to. Prior to joining the force, I had been a vigilante. I still helped people, but I didn't feel like I made a difference. There was such a huge shift in the way that people now approach me. It's incredible how much trust and safety an inspector emanates, that folk confide in you without even knowing who you are. That was my goal, for people to speak freely and feel comfortable while doing so. On every inspector's desk there was a nameplate as well as the field they specialized in. Detective Laura Mill's nameplate read homicide, for example. Mine read the same with a minor change. I dealt with supernatural cases. Redwater was home to all sorts of supernatural creatures, myself included, though this was at a time where ordinary human folk never believed it. They couldn't explain the strange occurrences happening around them. I could. I had been alive for 95 years at the time, a long life of collecting information, reading up about lore in books of said creatures, studying them, finding their weaknesses, knowing their strengths, making notes of those who may be good, much like myself, and those who are pure evil. That night, the storm never subsided. I filed in some paperwork at my desk in the police station, getting distracted from the strong winds rattling the doors, while the large raindrops thumped against the window. Good distraction though. I loved the gloomy weather, and not just because I could walk in it. Then amidst the storm, a father and his daughter had walked in. He spoke to Miss Ada at the front desk, and I saw her pointing towards me, which meant this was a supernatural report. I didn't realize at the time, maybe it was a reflex, but I always tend to tidy up my desk whenever someone approaches. While I cannot speak for other inspectors, I feel more nervous than the person giving their statement. The man introduced himself as Mr. Elias, but the girl didn't say anything. After a long pause, he introduced his daughter as Lena. He looked distraught, an empty shell of a man with nothing behind his eyes. Then he told me what happened. He mentioned his wife Sophia, 34 years of age, died in her sleep few nights ago. The morgue declared a natural cause of death, though she never had any ailments. She was the village witch, but not the evil kind. The kind that brews potions, creates remedies and ointments to help village folk. People loved her, she helped them, nobody would have wanted to hurt her. So he says. He couldn't accept the fact that she died of natural causes. He felt like it was foul play. Maybe someone poisoned her despite the autopsy reports not showing it. However, this entire time I couldn't help but notice the little girl playing with something in her hand, a sack-like bag of some sort. Still, I maintained the comforting look and posture and listened attentively. I understood why Mr. Elias was so reluctant in his report. If he went to any of the other inspectors, the case would have probably been dismissed as natural death. No signs of breaking and entering, no wounds on his wife's body, he said. Inspectors don't usually take time for cases like this. Lena then spoke out of turn, interrupting her father. We heard Mommy talking to us last night, she said. She keeps calling me outside to play. Lena also told me that her mother stands outside the window every night when Dad goes to sleep, tapping her sharp fingernail on the glass. Her mom looks extremely pale, much like myself, which I didn't take offense to. She's dirty, covered in mud, her hair untidy and her teeth rather rotten. Lena also said that her mother's eyes glow green in the night. Mr. Elias looked embarrassed. He was afraid that after hearing that I would dismiss the case. He said Lena just misses her mother dearly, that's all it is. He gave me the details of where his home was in the village and asked me to investigate. They lived on a farmhouse, and he also mentioned the cattle getting spooked every night, but that shouldn't hinder my investigation. This grieving husband and daughter just needed closure. It was probably a freak accident. It wasn't uncommon for healthy folk to succumb to a heart attack or their body failing them. When they left my desk, I stood up with them out of respect. Mr. Elias spoke to Miss Ada at the front desk before leaving, while I walked Lena to the front door of the station. "What's that in your hand, young lady?" I had asked. My tone wasn't threatening or intimidating in any way, rather curious, like someone her age asking the same question. She handed me the small sack-like bag covered in a brown cloth with string tied to it, holding it together. It was found under my mother's bed, she tells me, but father says it's not important. Maybe one of her ingredients inside. She also tells me she thinks it belongs to Aunt Rosa. When Mr. Elias approached us, he saw the bag in my hand. He brushed it off, looked at his daughter, bent down on one knee and said, "This bag is nothing, sweetie. Just mommy's work stuff, okay?" Just before he could leave, I had asked him if he knew what the bag was, and he said no. Sophia kept her work away from family. He never knew much about what she did and how she did it. I also asked him who Aunt Rosa was, and he seemed rather confused by the question. He gave his daughter a defeated look and sighed. "Rosa was my wife's sister," he said. "Was," I replied. He told me how Rosa died many years ago in a house fire. His wife made it out alive, but she didn't. They were twins. When I bid them farewell, I looked at the small brown sack in my hand. I didn't want to say it in front of Lena. She didn't need to know that this was a hex bag. Evil witches practicing the dark arts deal with that type of stuff. Though the fact that it was kept under the woman's bed told me that her death was not natural by any means. Means, motive, and opportunity. 3 key elements of any investigation. Lena just handed me the means, the tool or the weapon used to commit the crime. However, the motive was missing. Why was the crime committed? Sophia was apparently loved in the village. Why would anyone hurt her? Then there was opportunity. How did the hex bag end up under the bed in the first place? More so, was there even truth in Lena's story? Or was the kid trying to make up stuff to help her cope with her mom's death? Too many variables that weren't adding up. It was 8 p.m. when they left, which meant I had approximately 9.5 hours before sunrise. I donned my long black coat and hat and left the station. The city was far too busy for me to move at my full speed. Too risky, hence I decided to walk. It still rained, though not as heavy. Maybe walking would help me think better. 19 minutes later and I reached the village. The village of Deadwater Crossing looked more dire than I remembered, not just because of the storm. Trash can bonfires were everywhere with folk standing around them. Homeless people. When they saw my eyes glowing red in the night, they scurried away before I could hide my face. I hated that. I hated that I was a monster. However, there was a young man part of the group that never ran away, just stared at me without even flinching, so I made a note of that. Then I walked towards the farmhouse and saw Lena waving at me from the bedroom window. Mr. Elias opened the front door and showed me around the house, then made his way back inside. I inspected every corner, every wall, every window. Indeed, there were no signs of forced entry. It baffled me on how the hex bag got in. Maybe someone threw it through the window. But then a strange sensation fell over me. I felt like someone or something was watching me. There was movement in the woods behind me, a dark shadow moving just as quick as I do, but the shadow had antlers. Then, when it ran past the trees, I caught a glimpse of it. My eyes never deceived me before, though with the rain obstructing my vision, I did have doubts. I could have sworn I saw a deer with glowing green eyes running on its hind legs, humanoid-like. There were also unnerving sounds coming from the woods. Screeches, scratches, screams and howls. I entered the farmhouse and conducted my series of questions. Nothing too heavy, but also not beating around the bush. It wasn't Mr. Elias' statements that I was concerned with. It was Lena's. Just to see if her story checked out, I asked her again what she saw these past few nights. Usually when people lie or make up stuff, there's always holes in their statements. Hers, however, were rock solid. Then I mentioned Aunt Rosa again, but this time to Mr. Elias. He seemed to get irritated whenever her name was mentioned. When I pulled him aside and told him what the hex bag was, he still didn't believe me. This confirmed his wife's death was not by natural causes, but he was still in denial. Why did I feel like he not only knew about the hex bag, but who it belonged to? Then I realized that if I wanted answers, I needed to speak to the villagers of Redwater Crossing. If Sophia was loved just as much as Mr. Elias says, maybe they knew more about what was going on. Just as I was about to leave, my body froze from what I saw and heard. Inspector Fillian Hunt, Lena called out to me. "Mommy gave me another one of those bags just before you arrived," she said. She gave it to me through the window. I ran towards the kid and grabbed the hex bag from her immediately. Luckily, inside wasn't anything specific to Lena, just a general curse, so I kept it in my pocket. I would be able to withstand whatever curse was put on me, but no harm will come to the child. At first, I thought maybe Lena was seeing her mother's ghost wandering the farmhouse, but those green eyes she mentioned to me back at the police station, that was no coincidence. The deer hiding in the woods, walking like a humanoid creature, having the same eyes. I knew Mr. Elias was hiding something regarding Aunt Rosa. Furthermore, if that creature hiding in the woods was responsible for this, why did it want Lena dead as well? Then I approached the guy that I saw earlier, the one who wasn't afraid of me. A poverty-stricken man with an untidy beard and ragged clothing. He looked like he was in a bad way. He continued standing by the trash can bonfire, sketching something on old crumpled paper. "You're the only one that isn't afraid of me." "Why?" I had asked. He replied, "If a vampire wanted me dead, I'd be dead already." I was taken aback by that statement. I don't do well in those type of situations. Folk generally mention my appearance, but nobody point blank told me that I was a vampire before. "Would you like to buy my sketches, Inspector? Help a homeless man out. 1 silver coin per sketch, just enough for a loaf of bread." I looked at the sketches and they were incredible. He was naturally talented. His name was signed at the bottom in charcoal. William. I gave him coin, but I wasn't going to keep those sketches, rather ask him about them. He drew creatures on those pages, animals in their humanoid form, which is rather bizarre for ordinary folk to draw. "William," I said, "have you seen these creatures around?" "Oh yeah, near the farmhouse ever since Sophia died." "And how was Sophia?" "Her husband said she was the village witch and widely loved by all of you." "Oh yeah, definitely, that's true. Not once did she ever charge us homeless folk for medicine. Such a lovely woman she was. Quite the opposite to her sister, in fact." "Her sister? Meaning Rosa?" Yeah, Rosa, that was her name. What a wretched woman she was. She was jealous of Sophia, you know. Ah, they were twins. Really gifted woman. She wanted to make coin from her witchcraft, whereas Sophia just wanted to help people." "And a house fire?" "Oh yeah, that was many years ago though. Mr. Elias rescued Sophia from the house, but when he tried to go back for Rosa, it was too late." "So Lena was nowhere in the picture during that time?" "Yeah, that's correct. Despite us hating Rosa, it was a tragic accident. We were surprised to see Mr. Elias and Sophia married 1 year later." "Wait, why is that surprising?" "Well, Rosa was in love with him. He was in love with her too, I guess, but they weren't in a relationship. The entire village knew that." I stopped writing in my notepad when he said that. I just needed to confirm one piece of information before making the final verdict of what I thought the deer was in the woods. William, is there any way Rosa would have survived that fire?
Oh, highly unlikely, sir. It seemed like she was cremated in that building. No body was found.
I asked William if he could point me towards Dead Crossing's graveyard, and he did. He wanted me to keep the sketches since I paid for it, but I refused. He could make some real good money with those. When I entered the graveyard, I asked the old man and woman in charge for the location of Sophia's grave. They said there was an issue with the grave and they were rectifying it. They seemed petrified and thought I was going to arrest them. But why? They said the grave was dug out a few nights ago. There was a woman covered in severe burn scars, wearing a hooded cloak that asked to see the grave. When the strange woman left, Sophia's body was just lying there in the opposite direction she was buried in. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I hoped what I saw in the woods was an ordinary shapeshifter, but no. Not only did I know it was a skinwalker, but I had the means, the motive, and the opportunity. Skinwalkers were not simply monsters, rather a perversion of the spiritual path. They are human witches that choose their spiritual knowledge and power for evil. However, they aren't born as skinwalkers. For that, there needs to be an initiation, i.e., killing a close family member, most often a sibling. This heinous crime grants them the ability to walk the witchery way, so to speak. They are driven by greed, envy, malice, and the intent to harm. Stories link them to grave robbing as they not only use deceased bones for their rituals, but also have the ability to possess the dead. Furthermore, they can shapeshift into animals depending on their purpose, for speed, agility, or power. This gives them a chance to walk and work in plain sight. Their human or hybrid form doesn't depict them fully human or fully animal, rather in between, like the deer I saw in the woods. Skinwalkers can mimic the voice of others, luring their victims in false belief. That's where the superstition came from. If you hear a familiar voice calling you from the darkness, you should never respond. They are also adept at casting spells and curses, bringing death and illness to their victims, which explains the hex bag. Literally any animal could have entered the house of Mr. Elias and placed the hex bag underneath Sophia's bed. When the village witch died, Rosa's initiation had begun, from killing her own sister out of envy. It also made sense as to why Mr. Elias hated talking about Rosa. He knew she loved him. That guilt was eating him up from inside. Lena was the child of Mr. Elias and Sophia, the only reminder left of the love those two had. Rosa couldn't stand that, hence the hex bag for the child. Lena was just a kid. She saw her mother giving her the hex bag tonight. Why wouldn't she take it? Rosa possessed Sophia's body to do her dirty work. I didn't realize how much time had passed. I heard the village clock and knew it was midnight. But then I heard something that sent chills down my spine.
Lena, dear, come outside to play. Mom is waiting for you.
I ran as quickly as I could. The old couple in the graveyard were probably shocked to see me disappear, so to speak. With haste, I made my way towards William and removed my pistol. He feared for his life, throwing his sketches and coin on the ground, yelling at me to take it. Relax, I told him. I'm not going to hurt you. I bent down on one knee near the trash can fire. White ash was on the ground from the burning wood. Then I removed just one bullet from my pistol and smothered it in the white ash. William was rather confused by this but didn't say anything more. I put the bullets back and tipped my hat to William as a way to say thank you. I was running out of time. I moved in a dark wisp of smoke, making my way towards the farmhouse, hoping the Skinwalker didn't get Lena. Lena was grabbed by the Skinwalker in its deer form, an animal that would normally not cause any fear, but Rosa's form in this herbivore was absolutely terrifying. The tall humanoid deer creature with its glowing green eyes looked at me, while drool dripped from its mouth. Mr. Elias ran outside and stood frozen. There have been many examples of fight or flight mode when it came to people. This was one of the cases where I witnessed it in person. Your innocent child crying out for help, and all you could do is just stand there, numb to your soul. I fired a shot into the creature's arm and it dropped Lena onto the ground. The Skinwalker gave a loud shriek and hissed at me, then began changing forms. Rosa began glitching from animal to human and Mr. Elias couldn't believe what he witnessed. I yelled at him to get to Lena and make sure she was safe. The Skinwalker tried to flee into the woods, but I followed it. I hoped the bullet coated in white ash would slow her down. Ideally, I would need a shaman to get rid of the Skinwalker, but time was of the essence. However, despite being wounded, Rosa moved just as quickly as I did. What a terrifying thought, knowing that if she was at her full strength, I wouldn't have stood a chance. But now we were in the woods. The rain was heavy, the night was darker than usual, and I didn't need to hide my vampire self anymore. So I chased the Skinwalker down and tackled her to the ground. We rolled and tussled for a bit and her strength was almost equal to mine. Rosa, in her witch form this time, wearing her dark black hooded cloak, hissed in my face as I tried to move away, while my fangs pushed out. My fingernails grew 6 inches, sharp like razors and curved for clawing. I clawed a chunk of flesh from her arm before she threw me against a tree trunk. My goodness, was she strong. The storm then intensified, and now looking back on it, I wonder if the Skinwalker had anything to do with the weather that night. We fought for a while and her wounds weren't slowing her down the way I hoped they would. However, there was something important that I needed to do, and I knew that I would have to sacrifice taking a few hits. I leaped towards the Skinwalker and sunk my fangs into her neck, holding her tightly against me, making sure she doesn't escape. When she pushed me away, I spat out a chunk of her flesh on the ground. My vision looked bloody, like a red lens was placed over my pupil. That usually happens when my eyes turn red, something that I have no control over. She was angrier than before when I bit her. With blood dripping from my mouth, I smiled. I knew it would piss her off even more. Rosa was now too weak to change into other animals, which made my life easier. The Skinwalker dashed forward towards me looking like a blur. I assumed that's what people saw from me when I moved. She then clawed my shoulder and arm, ripping my coat. I could have stopped her right then and there, but that wasn't the plan. I needed her to be enraged, to be distracted, to be so caught up in trying to kill me that she doesn't realize or feel what I was trying to do. Once I did what I did, I pushed the Skinwalker aside. Rosa gave a loud shriek and began vibrating and glitching, then fled the woods, though I never chased after her. No matter how many times I attacked her, my fangs nor my fingernails would have killed her. From the lore in my library, one could only hope the white ash poisons them from inside, waiting for them to succumb to their wounds. But then again, who said I had to be the one to kill her? When I walked out the woods, I saw Mr. Elias holding a crying Lena. He frantically moved her hair, turned her head, checked her arms and legs to see if there were any wounds on her. Thankfully, there weren't any. His speech and mannerisms were that of a terrified person. He told me that Rosa had to be a Skinwalker and that I should have killed her, not let her escape. It annoyed me when he said that. Suddenly, at that moment, he knew what a bloody Skinwalker was, yet withheld information about Rosa and pretended to know nothing about the hex bag. I told him that withholding information almost cost him his daughter's life. Lena then seemed to calm down. Mr. Elias looked terribly sad. I could actually see the guilt on his face. I apologized shortly after. Lashing out that way, letting my emotions get the better of me, was not the way a detective inspector should conduct himself. Mr. Elias apologized as well. He was just afraid. He never knew Rosa survived the house fire all those years ago, let alone her performing such a heinous crime. Then he told me in a more respectful way that I shouldn't have let the Skinwalker escape. Before they succumb to their wounds, they still have one last curse or spell left in them. I know, I said, though I wouldn't worry much about it. I pointed towards the woods and waited patiently. 3, 2, 1. She's dead, Mr. Elias said, confused. Yes, I said, but I didn't tell him how or why. He didn't need to know that I snuck the hex bag into Rosa's cloak when she attacked me. Since the hex bag had nothing pertaining to Lena, no strands of hair, no fingernails, no saliva, the hex bag was just a general curse that needed to be in the victim's possession for it to work. Rosa used whatever little life remained of hers to curse the child, thinking Lena would have kept the hex bag. However, the Skinwalker didn't realize it was cursing itself. Mr. Elias and his daughter gave their final statements back at the police station. Lena gave me the biggest hug she could muster and was surprised to see the wounds on my arm and shoulder had healed. Magic, she said in astonishment. I remember having the biggest smile on my face when I said, yes, magic. Mr. Elias thanks me and I wish them well, watching them leave the station. Just a few more hours left for sunrise. I walked out the police station and sat on a bench outside. I loved how quiet it was. I remembered what Lena had said. Magic. But it wasn't magic though, was it? I wish I could have told her that the cells in my body repair themselves so quickly that the wounds heal accordingly. That small amount of blood from the Skinwalker when I bit her helped speed up the process. I wish I could have told her that I was a vampire. I wish I could have told her that I was just like her mother, stigmatized for what we are, when we're just trying to help. I saw Captain Langley through the window burning the midnight oil, so to speak. I thought about how hard he's worked to get into the captain position, and what a damn good captain he is. Not once treated me differently despite how I looked. I have him to thank for giving me this job, let alone me being a detective inspector. However, there was just one more thing I had to do before sunrise. So I went back to the village of Deadwater Crossing and spoke to someone. Then I made my way back to the station and entered Captain Langley's office. I told him who I just spoke to, what I spoke about, and if he would consider it. Captain Langley looked at what I handed him, smiled warmly and said, "Yes, Fillian, it's a done deal." 1 hour later and I was home, sitting on my bed sipping blood from a blood bag, courtesy of Mrs. Almani, the Redwater veterinarian. I saw the darkness of the night fading away as the sky became brighter. When I walked towards the window, I moved the curtain ever so slightly, just to take a peek at the sunrise and admire how beautiful it was. Then I reached out my hand, letting the sunlight touch my palm even though my skin sizzled while doing so. It was just for a moment, but it always made me smile. Like maybe there will be a time where my skin doesn't burn. Mr. Fenwick, bless his soul, would always tell me sunrise had beauty in it and not just in its appearance. It symbolized a new day, a fresh start, new beginnings. And as I had a cool shower, changed into my sleepwear and got into bed, while everyone else was getting ready for their morning commutes, I thought about what I had learned from the Skinwalker investigation. If that little girl Lena and her father didn't speak up when they did, I never would have been able to save them from the Skinwalker. Speaking up and asking for help, now that takes bravery. And that's what being human is about, is it not? You take that leap of faith and hope you stick the landing. Or if you're lucky enough, someone catches you before you fall. So I slept peacefully that morning, knowing Captain Langley was on board for William to join the RPF as our very first sketch artist in the station. He wanted coin for his sketches when I met him. Well, now he'll be getting a monthly paycheck, sketching witness descriptions of suspects. Though there's one minor difference. He won't be going back to a trash can. He'll have enough to rent a home. William was trying. That's all any of us can ever do. What do you know? Sunrises really do bring new beginnings.